We have a pothole pandemic. Pothole repairs basically should come with a 5-year guarantee, say campaigners. The AA revealed that they've had more than 600,000 call-outs in just a year. Well, let's talk to the president of the AA right now, Edmund King, about this. Good morning to you, Edmund.
Good morning, Julia.
I mean, another day, another week, another conversation about potholes. This is an obsession for an awful lot of people, but we understand why.
Well, indeed we do. When we survey drivers, 96% say potholes are the number one issue. But it's not just drivers, it's also those on two wheels, cyclists, motorcyclists, and indeed pedestrians are affected. So we've got a pothole partnership with British Cycling, with the National Motorcyclists Council, and indeed JCB to put pressure on government and local authorities about potholes. And what it's about, it's not just about the money. In fact, there is more money going into road maintenance. It is about more permanent repairs, and that's the issue.
And it's basically, if they are getting repaired, it's just a little sort of tentative pretend effort. I mean, certainly what I noticed in my local area, you get, the water company comes, and then the electric company comes, or someone else comes, and they dig it up, and then there's a patch, and then there's a hole that comes near it, and then someone maybe 6 months later might come and repair that, and you end up with this sort of patchwork quilt of holes. But of course, it means that the road is just no longer as solid and as safe as it used to be.
No, that's absolutely right. So where you've got that kind of channel where the water company or whatever has dug it up, if it's not filled in properly, you get cracks along the edges, you get water going into it, the water freezes, expands, and it gets another pothole. And in the end, that's a false economy, just doing it that way, because it's not permanent. Whereas, if you use some of the machines you're showing on the film there to fill a pothole properly, it will last 4 times longer, and it costs half as much. So
why don't they do it then? Is it just because it comes out of that particular budget at that time? Because let's face it, one of the things we've all noticed is how suddenly there are a load of roadworks that happen in the sort of 2 months before the end of the tax year. And it's almost like these little council departments, they're running their fiefdoms going, got to spend my budget, otherwise I'll lose it. But they seem to have the money for a load of absolute nonsense resurfacing, or some more road bumps here and all this, but they don't have the money apparently to do the things that we actually want them to do.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's right. But one of the things the government is doing, they announced at the weekend this traffic light system for local authorities, and they actually rate them red, amber, and green, and they withhold 25% of the funding till the local highway authority can prove that they're doing it right. And I think actually that will help in the longer term.
Because residents can vote, and the council taxpayers can say, well, hold on a minute, you're not doing as good a job as the neighbouring councils, so what's your excuse?
No, absolutely right. And those in the red, the government don't just leave them alone. There are advisors that can go in and talk to them about best practice and stuff.
But aren't a lot of these councils spending more on payouts to drivers and injuries? I mean, again, I think cyclists are the biggest risk, aren't they? Massive big hole, they need to suddenly move out, and then there's a car or a lorry behind them. But of course, none of them have lights on. They're wearing black, so we can't see them. Usual form. But they're paying out more than on not filling in the potholes than it would cost them to fill the sodding things in the first place.
Well, indeed. So you get into this vicious circle that you've got potholes, people get their cars damaged, they get injured, they claim against the local authority, and then that money's going into compensation, not going into the potholes.
Crazy.
But the other broader thing is the money isn't actually ring-fenced for road maintenance. So the government in the budget talked about 7.3 billion over 4 years. That sounds great if it's being spent on the roads, but not all local authorities spend their allocation on the roads. So that's something also that needs to be addressed, because it is the number one issue for drivers. And, we've seen in your clips, rubber ducks in potholes, daffodils in potholes. Even on the AA app now, we've got a pothole dodger game. You know, it's become that extreme that people are somewhat obsessed with potholes.
This is embarrassing. I remember many, many years ago travelling in Cambodia, and genuinely, I looked, how long the journey would be. It was before we had, apps and things on our phones, and we were told, oh, it's X number of miles, and I'm like, okay, so that'll be about an hour. They went, no, it'll take us about 6 hours because the roads were so potholed, and it was just basically a dirt track, even though it was like a major road between Vietnam and Cambodia. I mean, it was properly basic. And when I say potholes, I mean, if you ain't seen anything yet, I mean, properly, I mean, just about half of the road might sometimes be passable. It was extraordinary. We're a first world country.
Yeah.
It is embarrassing that people can't just drive along. I mean, often main arterial routes in major cities, not just sort of a country lane that only a few people might use in the middle of nowhere. But, people coming to our country, tourists, business people, I mean, it's embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, no, but it is, Julia. I was in France a couple of times last year and very local roads, sea roads, vineyard areas in Loire, Burgundy,
whatever. Very nice holiday, that.
Yeah, very nice. And cycled around the vineyards and whatever. And I thought, I'm going to be on small local roads. It'll be pretty bumpy. It was even. I didn't spot a pothole. So,
it's possible.
And France is a bigger country, and if they can get it right, we can certainly get it right.
And their council staff have a 3-hour lunch break every day as well. Edmund King, President of the AA, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I like that. A little bit of cycling around the vineyards.
Sounds
I prefer just someone to drive me, not going to lie. But anyway, Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, it is frustrating and it is an embarrassment to our country. But we're told the backlog is in the tens of billions of pounds worth of repairs.
It is. I'm looking at it from a slightly different perspective. Councils or companies that fill the potholes in to provide a 5-year guarantee, well, they've got a licence to print money at the minute because they do something that's a half-baked repair, knowing full well fail next year, they're going to get the contract to fill it in next year.
Exactly, there's no incentive.
So we should be doing this with all work that councils are contracting, and we should have something in place to have penalties
You should do it with your own builder at home.
Oh. Don't.
No, but he's having building work done. I like riling him about it off air. No, but I mean, this is the thing. Do you guarantee the work you are doing? But again, we've also got the whole thing. All our roads have been done. My road was dug up, I think, solidly for 6 months last year. I spent 3 months of this year, literally every week, trying to get a hole filled in that had been there for 6 months. When I finally got someone from the council to come over and look at it, and we were using 2 parking spaces, which we needed, but massive big hole, and they said, that's been there for a long time. There are weeds in it. I went, I know. I've been calling you about it.
And he said, OK, we'll look into that for you.
They did. No,
so they did more.
I think we were still at least another 10 phone calls away, to go, yes, I know, but can you fill it in? Because it's still not filled in. But this is the thing. It's just a level of incompetence. Is there also an element where, frankly, our local councils do not have enough money? They're spending it on, those rainbow crossings
you want rainbow crossings and DEI hires and
they do seem to always have money for stuff they care about.
There's money for all of that stuff.
And interestingly, some councils do much better than others. So why?
And there's money to create groups within local communities that keep them isolated from the rest of the community and everything else. We need a complete and fundamental reset of the priorities in this country, and we'll suddenly find that there's billions of pounds that are being misspent. We'll suddenly come into looking at priorities like potholes.
That is what reform says. I mean, I think one of the problems we also have there is local councils. They've lost, I think their money from central government has gone down by about 60% over the last couple of decades. And yet they're spending on things like, special education need children and like taxis for them, and also care for elderly, vulnerable people who live miles away from their families. These are massive, exponential expenses, and maybe these shouldn't be on local authorities. Maybe these should be coming out of direct national taxation.
Well,
spending.
Care for the elderly should come out of the NHS budget because
it would make more sense.
At the minute, bed blocking in a hospital means the local council doesn't pay for it. Local council will turn around and say, we can't take the person out into local care, so you keep them.
So we'll spend 10 times more to keep them in hospital.
But it's someone else's budget, so they don't care. But whose budget it is ultimately is
ours. Everything ends up with us being paid for. It is just a general level of incompetence, isn't it? And it's something that reforms that they were tackling in some of the councils they've taken over. We'll have to see the fruits of that. I imagine, again, like going into central government, it's really sodding hard to change things. But there we are. Anyway, so much